should become your capital asset, no matter whatever ups and downs you come across in your life. This quote was given by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, and our very first speaker is a Bachelor of Science majoring in Physics, Chemistry, and Mathematics, a postgraduate in Microelectronics, and a Doctor of Science in Medical Engineering, and also holds a Master of Business Administration in Corporate Crisis Management, a pioneering researcher and an opinion leader in the field of biophysics, radiobiology, nanotechnology, and sustainable energy. Specialized in electronics and medical engineering, he has worked for more than 20 years on generative tissue engineering and high-speed biological data acquisition, modeling and simulation of human cardiovascular system, artificial intelligence and neural network and medical diagnosis and engineering. Ladies and gentlemen, he is also a long-standing member of the United Inventor Association, the Institute of Electronics and Electronics Engineering, and its Engineering and Medicine and Biology Society, the Fellow of United Writers Association, the member of American Chemical Society, Genetic Society of America, and American Physical Society. He is the group of chairman of organization D. Scalene, Director-in-Chief Scientific Officer of the Center for the Advanced Research and Development, Director of Scalene Engineering Research Institute, and Managing Director of Scalene Cybernetics Limited, and currently serves as Chairman of Board of Directors for several global organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, may I please call upon our very first speaker on dais, Dr. Raja Vijay Kumar sir, amongst us, with a round of applause, please.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have slides. Okay. It's really my pleasure to be here today, especially a gathering of educationalists whom I admire a lot, because it is they who made me what I am today. When Dr. Anand spoke to me and said that I need to come for this this event and need to speak something, so I was in Calcutta. I just landed up last night, and I said, what to talk about? Then he said, I don't know, you talk something. So I was thinking, and I just chose one subject about 5 minutes ago. I thought it's good to speak about telling my experiences in research. I've been a researcher all my life. So talk about my experience a little bit, and also try to tell you all as to when should we start on actually researching on things. How do we inculcate this into our children? They are a future of the planet. Well, just to give a introduction, I started researching, I should say, at the age of 5. My mother was an engineer and herself, she was a telecom engineer in the olden days. My father was a chemical engineer. So having been in the scientific background, maybe it is not, because my other 2 brothers, they have nothing to do with science, so it may not be hereditary, but still, it was all started because of the sense of inquiry that my dad used to give me every time, and my mom too. Every time keep asking questions rather than the kids who ask questions to the parents. So it is a sense of inquiry that actually is the beginning of research. So when a child is into, it doesn't matter what age, into it, the sense of inquiry comes out. And that is where you identify and, promote that way of direction, that direction, to make him or her, be a creative person contributing to the progress of humans and the planet. My first patent was at the age of 14. It was a fruit counting machine, It was a, because those days, I am talking about in the late 70s, those days we used to buy fruits by count. So 1 dozen, 2 dozen, 25 numbers, 100 numbers. You go to buy, let's say, lemon, 100 lemons cost this much. So it is that way, not like the present day where the fruits and vegetables are weighed and they sell it by weight. Of course, this was a better system to do, but those days it was by numbers. Of course, things progress, science progress, everything progress. So from counting to weighing, you have come. It's not bad, because if you take simple things, take time to evolve. Some things which are very simple, we could have thought about it. Now you think, hey, why didn't people weigh at that time? Why are people counting at that time? It's the same thing. For a long time, if you know, from the 40s and 50s, you had this signaling, for the cars to signal to go left or right. Okay, they used to put their hand outside and do this. Okay, and it took almost 70 years to somebody to think that you can blink a light on the side and indicate the same thing in a very simpler way, much safer way. So these things happen. But yeah, coming back to this. So my fruit counting machine was meant for automatically counting the fruits. So you put on a huller, you put on your fruits inside, you got different machines, and he sets how many and pushes a button, and you get that many fruits out. So this was my first invention. This was my first, design I did. I was in 8th standard at that time. Very thrilled, excited. Then somebody said, see, this is not the way you should become an inventor. You want to become an inventor, you need to get a patent. Then I asked, what's a patent? Okay. Then I went to my dad and asked, what's a patent? Oh, he said, it's the recognition that you were the first one to do it. Okay. But then he said, you may not be the first one. Maybe somebody else has already done it. Then I said, how do I know it? I said, you don't have to know. You just put for a patent. That fellow's job is to search and tell you. So he said, okay, that's great. So as a 14-year-old boy, I took a train from Bangalore and carried my machine, which it's not required to. And knowing nothing, I went to the patent office in Chennai. Those days the patent office was in Walaja Road in Chennai. So I took it there, went to the patent office in the morning, went by the Madras Mail Express train, mail train, and then reached Walaja station. There was a separate station for that. And then got on there and then went to their office, freshened a little bit in the railway station, dressed up. And somebody interestingly told me that if you have to wear a black coat that's a uniform you have to wear if you have to be an inventor. So got hold of a black coat from somewhere and then went there. I told the examiner, I think somebody came, said, what do you want? So he happened to be an examiner. So then I said, see, I wanted to meet the controller of patents. He said, controller of patents for what? He said, controller of patents is the head of the patent body. So he said, okay, sit down. A small boy asking for, I said, I'm an inventor, so I want to meet him. So he said, okay. Then around 10:30 in the morning, he came and he said, come in. So I walked in and the controller stood up and said, I heard you're an inventor. I said, yes. He said, sit down. So I sat. I gave him a brief explanation, and then he said, this is not the way you raise your papers. Then I said, what paper? This is my invention. Can't you see it? So he told the examiner, please prepare all the papers, ask him, prepare it and file it. and 25 rupees were the filing fee. I filed it and came back with a acknowledgement of patent pending. Then I was officially declared as an inventor at the school. Okay, so I'm just telling you why this story is, because see how thrilling it is when you create something. And from that time on, I have been doing the same job. Only thing is, now I practice a little more expensive hobbies, okay, than what I used to do. So how do we inculcate this in the schools, in colleges? I tell you, during my high school, I had a fantastic teacher, because the teacher plays the first role. Fantastic teacher who, of course, has beaten me many times. In fact, he hit my knuckle so badly that I still remember him every day when I look at my fingers. Of course, nowadays you can't touch the children, that's a different thing, but it used to be that way on those days. And he encouraged me a lot throughout the period. That is, whatever you say, whatever you do, okay, he never ever once said, this is rubbish or this doesn't work. He always says, you try. See, in research what happens, you fail 1,000 times and maybe succeed once. But that once you succeed is a eureka moment. We all as researchers are looking for that. So, I was working for a German company after my education, and it was in sports engineering. You know, sports engineering is to, you know, all that photo finish you see and, you know, third umpire in cricket and things like that. So I used to work on that subject, okay, in a company that is specialized in that. Okay, and it's called Musa Technica, the company's name. So I was heading projects there. And after a few years of doing projects in different places, like the Italia 1990 Soccer World Cup was done by me, then I was posted back into India, in Mumbai, to work on the World Cup cricket in 1996. I had no idea what cricket is, honestly. And of course, there was an excellent match referee, Clive Lloyd. I think you must have heard of him. Older people would have heard of him. Clive Lloyd, who was a cricketer. And he actually educated me into cricket. Okay, in fact, it was he and me who actually introduced the concept of third umpire in the cricket system. Okay. Well, this was in 1996. And after that, I felt I am not going to go back out of this country. So I told my dad, he said, what are you going to do? He said, research. My brother said, you're crazy. You're jumping out of an aircraft without a parachute. You know what will happen? You work for a German company just because you've been posted for the 2020 Olympics in Australia, Sydney Olympics. You are just quitting because you don't want to go to Sydney. He said, that's what I want to do. I want to be in my country. Well, I started an organization called Organization the Scalene. Scalene is a triangle that has got no equal sides or same angle, but it still remains as a triangle. So that was the first concept of research. And my dad told me one thing, is if you are going to do research, keep in mind it's gambling. You know, gambling you lose a lot of money, but if you win big, number one. And secondly, when you gamble, never take others' money. So if you promise me you will not borrow from anywhere, you will not take any grants, you will not take any donations, you will not take anything from anybody, but would do the research, your research product is coming into the market because you're doing an applied research, it has to come into the market. Once it comes into the market, that has to make money for your next creation. If you agree to this, do it. And that's how we started. And I kept up to his word even till today. I never take any government grants. I never take any donations. We are completely debt-free. We don't borrow money from the banks, nothing. But today I have about 37 original patents under PCT, and in various areas, we research on everything. You see, we've got a team that actually looks around for the problem. Like COVID. In February 2020, rather now December 2020, when the COVID had just started. But 2 years before that, we had developed a superalloy, okay, with a palladium based superalloy. And this metal, if you excite, it produces photons. This is again a long research done before on photonic sciences, and then produces photons of a spectrum of frequencies that when strike bulk material ejects photoelectrons. And when the COVID came, we said this is a fantastic idea. This guy, the SARS-CoV-2, is every time looking for the negative membrane potential for you to cling to the receptor binding domain. So this is a good idea. So we said, why not we do this? By February, we came out with a device when India had just 10, 15 cases. Okay, and then I wrote to the Niti Aayog, I wrote to the Ministry of Health, and they said, there's no COVID in India, it won't be coming at all, it's only 45 cases. You see SARS, what happened, MERS, what happened, nothing came here. And 2007, the flu, what happened, nothing came here. India is immune to everything. I said, fine. But we knew it is going to be disastrous, and we took them and we sent it to the United States. We got it tested in almost every country in the world, and today it is used in 59 countries. This product is used in 59 countries. Many people must have heard of this device. It is called the PsychoCan. Many people must have heard, maybe having it in your organizations or hopes. So this is the way when we talk about the need-based research. That means when we look at, we need to have some kind of situation where we need to, look for the requirement, the necessity, and start working towards that. Because you have limited resources to just play around with everything and anything of your interest. Now, coming to the institutions where you can create this kind of situation, I think every engineering colleges, science colleges, even colleges in social side, okay, should also keep one thing in mind, is that you can create such assets. Such assets in the sense, such engineers, boys and girls, who can think out of the box. Actually, the thinking out of the box concept is pretty old. Now the concept is you have to throw out the box itself. We don't want the box anymore. Okay, you have to be outside the box and think outside. You have to be outside the box. And take that into the consideration. Have every institution has and should have a local research body. In fact, in Pune, you have that, I think there's a university, university called Bharatiya Vidyapith, something. They have got a medical college. And they have just recently, very interestingly, they set up what we call it as a thinking clinic. It's just a simple room, and you have a table, and you've got a lamp that is always burning, and you have papers and pads to write. Anybody can come in there, write his thought, and leave it there. Okay, and somebody else comes in there with something else, looks at this, see, that way they build. And it is so happened, this happened about 2 years ago, and it's already that they are now looking at really, good outcomes from there, from that institution. So this is how we should create a in fact, every engineering college should have a department of research and development, which it is actually field agnostic in the sense it is not specific for a particular field of science, technology, or sociology or psychology or anything. It's an institution which gets registered with the national body, like the Department of Science and Technology or CSIR and so on, and the institution can put some seed funding into it. Imagine, these kids can invent a lot of things. Lot of things. They are bubbling with so much of ideas. Okay, they can invent so many things. You can patent so many things. This can, after a period of 3 to 4 years, this kind of a department will be completely self-sustaining and probably even be able to produce money for something else in the same institution. We don't have that kind of thing. Because the problem is that today the main thing is our education is directed around, and the scores, numbers. It's not how much you learn, what you contribute, it's the number, how much you get. With the best of these numbers, my experience, I can tell you, in my institution, when we do a recruitment, we find at least 50 to 60% of the engineers and science postgraduates, graduates, even PhDs, are unemployable. This is the problem. Their mark sheet says fantastic. Rest everything says fantastic because we have our own system of interviewing them. They fail. They may ask, what's a special interviewing system what you have, which others don't? It's very simple. We have to recruit 3 people. We call 15 or 20 people. Get everybody at the same time. Time of interview, 10 o'clock. So you have all the people, 15, 20 people in our campus at 10 o'clock. First thing in research we need to know is patience is the most important thing. Patience. So how do we check the patience? They come at 10 o'clock. At around 11:30, somebody goes and says, the team is supposed to interview are very busy today, something came up, so you have to wait for some time. You can have a cup of coffee in the canteen or something. So he goes, has a cup of coffee, sits there. Afternoon comes, he says, see, still it's delayed, so I suggest you people have your lunch and come back. So they go for lunch. Out of the 20 who are there, 50% is out. They don't come back. They go for lunch and go home. Then this continues. Tea time. Again, some people go out. Some people say, I just wanted to have a smoke. I'll just go out and come. Say, okay. He goes and never comes back. Finally, you will find 5 people. 20 came in the morning and 5. So these 5 are the ones, number 1, who needs the job very much, and number 2, they have the highest of patience. Then we take them for an interview. Our interviews are generally totally fundamental. Very, very fundamental. We don't go to the subject matter. We tell them very simple problem we put across them and say, how do you solve it? And those problems, to solve it, you need no tools. You need only one tool, and that is there with you, and that is your brains. And this is how, second point we recruit this one. Then after that, then we look at their certificates and other credentials which they get. Now this is important in research, and this had to be inculcated from the college, from the school they study and come out. You inculcate this. What is patience? You got to wait. You will fail 100 times. You fail 1,000 times. But keep in mind you will succeed once. This should be inculcated in the young brain. And when they come out, finally, into the industry, into research organizations, their contributions will be immense. If you take our institution, there is no iteration. We have everybody working from 8, 10, 12 years, and there are also newer kids. People come there to do their internship. We encourage other institutions to send their students for internship. They don't pay anything for the internship also. So we give them a project and we guide them to whatever extent we have. Then we have other students who come from other universities to do their PhDs there. They are registered with the university, but they do their research in our institution, our campus, because we have multiple laboratories which has got the expertise to do different things. So today we work from healthcare to water to energy, oil, gas, food, botanical migration. Okay, so many areas and so many fields, and we've got different experts from different areas, and this makes it much more better because it's all knowledge of all fields are put together even in a single research. So you will have a microbiologist who actually contributes for something to do with another technology which has nothing to do with microbiology. But it may be required for its secondary, for example, the testing, for example, the other thing. So this is the way you build a consolidated, and this can be very well done in an institution, much more than in an industry, because every industry is concentrating on one single area. It's very rare like us that we work on so many things, but otherwise, mostly in industry, it is all one. But it's not the same with the educational institutions, with the colleges and the universities, because they have got multiple this one. So this is what we need to do. I think any kind of help anybody would like to have, they can always contact me, and we can also, our team is there. We are about 140 professionals together, so we can also help in wherever possible. With this, I thank to have given opportunity. I think I took a little more time than what was allotted to me. So thanks a lot, and thank you very much.
Indeed, it's a pleasure to hear you, sir. With a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, that was the very first speaker, Dr. Raja Vijay Kumar, sir, amongst us. I would request Dr. Anand Gopal Naik to kindly come over on stage. We have a small felicitation to do for you, sir. I would request you to please come here in the center of the stage.